Innovation pushes the sport of disc golf, but rarely does a disc golf brand separate themselves from the rest like this company has. Elevation discs made from rubber materials, made to stop on a dime, to counter rollaways, and to provide a very different feel than what regular plastics provide. To find out more about the story behind Elevation, I got the chance to talk to Austin and Macy, the founders of the company. From how they started, what it's like to come out with a new mold, and for what the future looks like for Elevation discs. Hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Okay, so how did you guys get into disc golf? Like, where did it all start? Like, point one, where did it all start for you guys?
Yeah, disc golf, like disc golf in general. I started playing in 2018, I think. Right, that's when we moved. Yeah. So we got married and like moved down to San Diego. And a group of friends that I had just made were into disc golf, so they took me to Kit Carson Park in San Diego. It's in Escondido, but yeah, that was the first time I played, and I was, like most people, I was pretty much hooked like right away, first round. I wasn't very good, but like it was a lot of things that I liked about sports all in one. So yeah, started playing a lot. Your disc golf journey, I think, is a little different.
Yeah, when we moved to San Diego, I was starting my doctorate program. So obviously grad school is really demanding. So he'd always want to play. And I'm like, dude, I have classes. I can't get out there. But in the past few years, I've been playing a lot more, especially here in Texas. And yeah, as the company grew, I think my love personally for the sport kept growing and my appreciation, obviously, because it looks a lot easier than it is. There's a lot of nuances and techniques, and so as we've continued building our lineup, I think I've also realized the things that we need out of our discs, but also the things I need to keep working on. So I have a very wobbly forehand right now. So that is like my goal for right now for this year. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think the company for me started as my passion did, whereas Austin really already had that groundwork laid.
So you're already playing disc golf in 2018. When did the idea, or what were the first steps of starting a new disc golf company like?
Yeah, the idea, honestly, so I have an engineering degree, biomedical engineering. And in 2018, I started working in like the industry, and it was like I went to school to be an engineer, and part of the reason I don't think I realized it at the time was like I really wanted to be creative and like really valued creativity. And then I got into my career and it was like so not creative. Like it was I some engineering is, but like specifically what I was doing was basically like glorified paperwork, it felt like. Um and it was just really hard for me, like as anybody does, like you start your life and it's like not what you expected. So that kind of led me to just like, okay, I like disc golf and like I have some experience with like 3D printing and stuff. So it kind of started as like a hobby of just like wanting to make discs and like use it as a creative outlet basically. And that was kind of how we got going, just like designing stuff and printing it, seeing how it flew. The first few were like really, really bad. Like it was like so overstable or like so understable, and there was just no in between. It's kind of hard to like, probably the hardest disc I think still to make is one that goes straight, which is also like one of the hardest ways to throw too, which is funny. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how we got going. And then from there, it was taking the next step to like, okay, so like this is fun, but now like could we turn this into a company or like eventually a career? But at first it was just like some a fun way to, I guess make money and share what we were doing like with the world. Um
And I
yeah.
think like going off of that, when life is hard or like when it doesn't meet your expectations, I think you have to find a way to make it bearable almost and like find joy. And I think for us, that's what it was. We had a tiny 600 square foot studio apartment and we had a small kitchen table, and that 3D printer took up the whole thing. And so we started just like eating in bed and 3D printing on the kitchen table. And it was just such a fun way to, I think, cultivate hope, at the time when his job was really unfulfilling and school was hard and we were moving into the pandemic and things just seemed bleak. Disc golf was such an outlet for creativity and innovation, and it gave us something to look forward to get up for. So yeah, I think from there, Austin would go on the course with those 3D printed prototypes, or once we had the rubber ones, we'd go out and play, and there's just such a market for it, the way that it doesn't really have as much ground play, the way that it's flexible, the way it absorbs force. It's just hard to find a way to market something, you know what I mean? Like, because we have our side of it, and it's like the nerdy material side and how it absorbs impact and all that stuff. But it's like, okay, how do we bring this to the general public in a way that's just as, I don't know, like captivating?
How did you get from like the 3D printed, like what were the materials you were working with 3D printing to where now you got the rubber materials? You can't 3D print rubber, can you?
No,
Okay,
well,
that
not
makes
that I know of. Yeah.
sense.
So they have like flexible filament, but so basically like the flexible stuff that I'm working with, which is like probably the easiest stuff to work with, is still like basically a normal disc golf disc amount of flexibility. It's TPU, but it's like on the stiffer side. Um, and yeah, so at first I was just making like basically normal discs and just getting them to fly certain ways. And then from there, it was like, I guess the main motivation was as I was getting into different discs and like trying out new ones, I was looking for like, I feel like there's a lot of unwanted ground play, like everywhere, like on any course, like unless you're playing on a course with just like the most lush, beautiful grass everywhere, it's like there's going to be ground play. So I started getting into like, okay, maybe I could get like this soft putter, or like even like this super stupid soft putter or whatever. And or like G Star was like some of my first like more flexible discs, like drivers and stuff like that. And it was always like, technically, I understand that it's a little more flexible and therefore it must be doing something, but I always felt like it wasn't noticeable. You know what I mean? Like it was like, okay, like sure, it's flexible, so therefore it absorbs more ground plane stuff. But in practice, it's like, does that flexibility really like make a difference to what I'm doing and what I'm using the disc for? So I guess from there it was like I felt like there are only a few examples of people who really committed to like, let's make this disc floppy. You know what I mean? Like I guess the main one is like the blowfly. And to me, it was special that that was made by basically the guy who made the sport itself, Steady Ed. And uh, I don't know, kind of like going off of that idea, like, okay, can we push the limit of flexibility to like push how far you can limit ground play and like really feel and see the difference? And that's how we got to like from just molds that I tried to make them unique to like a mold plus a material that was like really, I guess, weird and out there.
Yeah, what was the reception like immediately like when you guys started manufacturing? Because my first my first experience with an elevation disc was actually someone I was playing against in a tournament, and super hilly course, he folded it up into like a pancake and threw it up in the trees, and then it split open in the air and just flopped down. Meanwhile, my disc rolled down the hill. And that would, now that that's illegal in PTGA rules because you can't do that anymore, but this was prior to that. What was the reception like having that flexible of a disc?
I feel like obviously it was so different, and at that time, plastic was because of COVID, we were having a lot of the disc golf manufacturers were having a hard time getting the right materials and getting things produced. So I think honestly, we came up in popularity with like the perfect cross section between plastic not being able to be produced as easily, and people loved it. I mean, we really had like a 2-year waiting list for our retailers. It wasn't until this year that we actually were able to expand our retailers significantly. And it was nothing but positivity and emails about, when are you getting these back in stock? We love these. We're obsessed. This is so unique. So it seems like the retailer market and stores across the globe were really excited about it. And customers also were feeling like it was improving their game, and they felt empowered, and they felt like, yeah, on those hilly courses or on those big, hillsides, and you just know your shot might not be the best, they felt like they had confidence in the product. And it was a really, honestly, a wonderful first few years of always being out of stock, not really having to do too much marketing because the product spoke for itself. And we're finally moving into the area where we're able to grow more intentionally, and keep diversifying the materials to help, I think, um, like gain more of a market, because some people don't like the OG. They want more of a stiffer, like an EcoFlex. So we've been kind of playing around with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some people really struggle to see like that, especially the OG material was like different, and like maybe don't throw it as hard as you can, like as soon as you get it. Like it was, some people, I feel like it was hard uh to convince, or maybe we'll never convince like how useful it is. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of people who immediately were like, I think maybe just in the same boat I was, where it was like you could immediately see like how useful it was. And yeah, so at first it was pretty good, I'd say overall.
And I think being a new company and not being like business people, like I'm still a psychologist, like I know feelings. I don't know business and marketing. And Austin was a biomedical engineer. It was a really nice reception, I think, to ease us in to having a company, especially when it's run out of our house by us, and I think it was a really encouraging first few months.
Yeah.
What's the process like of when you come out with a new disc and working with a manufacturer? How's the whole process come out when you come out with a new mold or I almost said plastic, but a new rubber material? What's that whole process like?
Yeah, so I mean, it starts out obviously like with an idea. Like a lot of times we'll ask like our team, like Team Elevation, what sort of mold they'd be interested in, like what sort of flight. um Also, I'm like always trying to think of like maybe variations to like popular flights or like popular styles of molds, just to keep it like not trying to make clones of everything. And yeah, so it starts out with the idea, then moves on to me designing in CAD and like trying to find just like whatever flight numbers I'm trying to achieve, like the right amount of like material over the parting line, or like the right amount of curve on the bottom of the disc. And normally takes like a lot of trial and error. Like I'll I think for like the gecko, it took like 13 different prototypes and to get to something that I liked. And then from there, we work with the manufacturer, get the mold made, um, get the samples of the mold in, and this is where like my experience from biomedical engineering comes in, because I did a lot with like manufacturing. And when you manufacture something, it's never exactly what you think you're trying to make. Like it's like something's always a little different. So it's always a little bit anxiety provoking to like get the samples in and test them out. They're always like slightly different than I expected. Um, and then from there, either you got to make adjustments, or maybe it wasn't exactly what you intended, but you still really like it, and that's always a fun feeling. um, and yeah, and then from there, it's like
PDGA approved.
PDGA approved. Pick out our colors. We always try to have fun with the colors and make them different every time.
Yeah.
Stamp designs.
Yeah, typically like I kind of come in on the back end when the prototype is ready to go, when it's sent to PDGA for approval. And then I get to say, okay, what are we going to name it? What do we want the disc to embody, or how it flies? How can we tie that into like a disc identity? And then we'll work with local tattoo artists or other artists and have a stamp designed, pick the colors. And then in about a month or so after that, um, we'll start doing our own internal quality control. So we have to weigh and inspect every single disc, which we were actually doing before we jumped on the call. We have some new runs in, and that takes about a few weeks. And then they're finally ready to be ordered by retailers, and then we pick a date for the release.
Was there any trial with becoming PDGA approved originally, or was that an easy process?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. I think, like, I assume you mean because like it's such a strange disc and like flexible and weird and stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
just a different
yeah,
material. Not so much the molds or anything, but the material wise.
yeah, there weren't really any issues. I mean, the guy who does it has seen like so many discs. I don't think much surprises him. Um, and there are like some things where it's kind of hard to measure like the height of the disc, for example, when the flight plate can just like be pushed down. um, but yeah, he didn't really have any issues with it. I think most of the what the PDGA sets forth is like pretty easy, even with like our material to like find the right dimensions and stuff like that. Um, there were some interesting things, I guess, like since our discs are compression molded instead of injection molded, it essentially like we're able to make thinner like areas. So when the Interceptor came out, we were told it was like the thinnest flight plate that he's ever measured because it was like it's like 1.3 millimeters, and normally with like injection molding, like you need close to 2 millimeters in like your thinnest section. So that was pretty unique. And then obviously the flexibility looks a little funny on the flexibility test because it's so low compared to everything else. But yeah.
Yeah, they've been pretty supportive, and they're always like excited or looking forward to this. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here's your approval. So it's been a good process.
Were you hurt at all by the rule that you couldn't fold discs or throw them overhand anymore? Like ball it up like a baseball and throw it? Did that have any impact on you guys at all?
I think for us, we had never envisioned the product being used that way, because I know it's kind of like it's fun, people kind of think it can be gimmicky, but we always saw ourselves as a disc for your bag for like serious play, not just fun in the park, although like that's great too. So yeah, when that rule disbanded, nothing really affected our sales. It made sense to us because that wasn't the intended use anyway, like how we saw it, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it didn't really impact us too much, but I think there is still the question in some people's minds, like these are illegal or you can't use these, which isn't the truth. It's just that new ruling about the baseball
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, there were like a couple people that seemed really disappointed about that and like told us because they it seemed like that was pretty much exclusively what they use flexible discs for, is like balling them up. But yeah, like she was saying, and it's the same thing with like the rule change or like adjustment where like basically if our disc gets stuck in the cage, like it counts. Um, and like that's cool. Like I'll take it. That's a cool byproduct. But like we didn't make them to get stuck in the cage or like go through the cage. So like if they change it one day, it's like, all right, whatever. It doesn't really hurt what we envisioned as the main purpose of the product, but it does hurt a little bit of like the fun that can come from it.
So, with the main vision of being a disc, that's going to be able to counter the slopes, be able to stop on a dime, stuff like that. You guys have been working your way up from putters, right? From like putters to mids to fairways. Is there an expansion further into distance drivers? Is there even worth trying? Are you guys going to be working on that in like the future?
Uh, yeah. So I've made a couple. Like I've gotten to like the make a mold stage of distance drivers, and it's pretty tricky. Like it's kind of hard. First of all, I think it's hard to make again a distance driver that isn't crazy overstable or crazy understable. I think it just gets harder and harder, like the faster the disc gets, because like every amount of stability like matters that much more. Um, so that's a little tricky. And then yeah, like you're saying, I do think that there's utility for, especially like in our EcoFlex, like the stiffer material for a distance driver. Um, but yeah, it's a matter of trying to figure out like, okay, where would that material be the most beneficial? Like, uh, do we want like a flippier distance driver so you can get more distance and like have a soft landing at the end? Or do we want something more overstable so it's just more like, I don't know, makes it more reliable and stuff like that? Um, but yeah, so I could see us getting there. We've tried, but it it maybe isn't our primary goal at the moment.
I think as we like explore different things, it always takes a little bit longer than you anticipate, right, with
Yeah.
anything. And so I know for our glow discs, we had come out with a glow Binks I like over a year ago, but when you threw it, it was just awful. And so sometimes when you're doing like working with the new materials or adding any new element in, you have to really do a cost benefit analysis on the utility of the material versus the disc and the need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also it just takes a bit. So we have played around, probably not coming out in the next few months, but hopefully in the future.
Yep. And like personally, I'd like one because my bag is mostly our discs right now anyway. Like it's probably like 75%. And really the only thing that isn't replaced is like distance drivers or like just like faster fairway drivers. So for me personally, I'm like, yeah, cool, I want one of those.
Yeah, I think of like certain players on the Pro Tour when throwing distance drivers that are a lot spike angles and a lot more aggressive. That's what I was thinking towards, of being able to use a disc that all it gets a lot of distance, but also is able to stop when I need it to stop. Um, but yeah, that was what I was thinking on that. How's the future of the brand look like now that you've built up an arsenal of molds and you're maybe coming out with more, but now it's time to expand more, as you said that now you have more opportunities for retailers. What's the future of the brand look like moving forward?
I think that's a great question. For me personally, I think that we would love to keep expanding in a way that's in line with our values and our mission. We really try to give back to our communities, to people in need, to local charities. So I envision us continuing that moving forward on a grander scale. So basically having every disc, every release be some sort of charity disc. We've also talked a lot about adding scholarships for local community colleges and different institutions. Um, just a small stipend just to help with the cost of attending any type of higher education, and ensuring that our team has what they need and really growing that. So we're adding a lot of benefits to being on the team this year, including like having a doctorate level sports psychologist come in and teach about performance psychology. And she's worked with like the Navy SEAL Foundation and a lot of athletes and veterans and military populations. Um, yeah, considering allowing them to wholesale, things like that, giving them affiliate links, like just really investing in those close groups. Um,
Yeah, I think like as a company run by just like two random people, like you don't get a lot of perspective from just between the two of you, especially we're married, like we share perspective on like a good amount of things. So I think investing in our team will
mhm.
hopefully like lead our future. And like I said, like I I try to include the team in like what we're adding to our lineup and like what they want to see, because like maybe what I want to see isn't what most people want to see. Um, and yeah, so just continually investing in the team will hopefully like guide us in the right direction into making more of what people want. Um,
Oh, we've also actually today we just got our first sample of our bags that we haven't released, have never talked about, but that is something that we hope to kind of move into and help supplying that. It's been like a year in the process, and so we're excited to tweak that a bit. And we've also talked about like investing in a small factory. You know, maybe bringing manufacturing in house one day, because that's a far off dream. It's very expensive, but it's something that we want to continue to do because especially if we do make the move to West Virginia, there's a lot of people who are in need of more economic opportunities and stable jobs. And I think that could be a community that could be helped.
Yeah.
So I think just further investing in the people who make our company great, not us, we're just whatever, but like our team and our retailers and diversifying our lineup and yeah, just like supporting our communities more too, seeing how we can give back.